Good afternoon, everybody. I am here and have Lee Pisa on the podcast today as a guest. How are you doing, Lee?
I'm fine, Miss Jessica. How are you doing?
Very well. We're here today to talk about Gulf Coast College and how it has changed over the years. Lee, when did you attend Gulf Coast Community College?
I graduated in 80, and so in the fall of 1980, I started at the college.
Okay. Well, what was the college like when you were there? And tell us about your experience and what you majored in and things like that.
Well, I started out talking to my advisor, and I started out pre-med. But then I changed that after the first semester. It didn't seem like what was for me. And I went into a general college transfer 2-year program, just a basic 2-year program at that time, I believe they called it a college transfer program. They didn't have a 4-year program. So it was designed to give you the 2 first years, and then you picked up on your major with the second 2 years, I guess was the idea. So I got an AA in general studies.
Okay. And what was your experience like at Gulf Coast?
Well, back then, of course, it was all in-person attendance. So everybody came to class every day. You saw your instructor, you saw your instructor every day that you had class, of course. Some classes were 3 days a week, some were 2, but you had to physically come to the college to go to class. There was no, or that I knew of, there was no remote learning. And we had a big student center where the students would take their breaks. And so the people all gathered in the student center throughout the day. They had a cafeteria in there you could eat, and you could study in there. And they had, little guests sometimes come in. Sometimes a musician would come in and do some stuff. Sometimes a speaker would come in and talk. And so it was really, I enjoyed it. It was you had the nice parks right next door to it, plenty of parking. I mean, really, it was a good time. I won't call it high school on steroids like some people do, because it was more serious than that. But I liked the instructors. I liked it.
Okay, well, I remember we talked briefly about what we would talk about, and you had mentioned what it was like at one point whenever how they handled attendance there back then. Will you explain that one of your situations that you had shared with me?
The story I told you, I had a history prof I was really proud of, Professor Terry Jack, Dr. Jack, and he taught history, probably amongst other things. But he about our attendance, he had told us, look, you are not late. As long as you beat me to class, you won't be late, because there was a strict attendance policy. And by the time the bell got done ringing, you were supposed to be in your seat. And some of the teachers enforced it more than others. Dr. Jack said, look, if you beat me to class, I'm going to call you. I'm going to say that you made it. He said, sometime I might be late a half a minute. There's traffic. And so I'll never forget walking across the campus. And we were both approaching the class. I could see Dr. Jack approaching from across the campus, and as we got closer, the bell went off. Of course, it's an electronic bell. It was a tone. And as the bell went off, Dr. Jack looked at me and recognized me across the campus. And of course, I could tell him in his 3-piece suit with a sweater vest and briefcase, and little walking stick, or I think it was an umbrella. Anyway, so when the bell stopped ringing, I noticed Dr. Jack break into a run. And he's heading for the classroom door. And I remembered what he said. So I broke into a run. And I can't remember who was closest or farthest away. I'm not going to embellish it. But the point is, I barely beat him to class, slid through the front door, and slid into my seat right before he walked in. And he walked in. There was not even a word exchanged. I made it before he did. And he just very officially just started class like nothing had happened. Kind of pulled himself together a little bit. He had been running in his 3-piece suit with a briefcase and umbrella across the campus. And so anyway, I loved that guy after that. I never missed a class. I'm pretty sure I was never late again after that day either.
Well, That was very interesting. Also, we don't have any fraternities at the college these days, but tell us about the fraternity that you were part of and the name of it and things like that.
Well, I was in a fraternity called Iota Gamma, which was a local fraternity. It was not a national fraternity. However, we had a lot of, at the time, a lot of prominent people, including a state representative. Ron Johnson was in Iota Gamma, now that I think about it. But so we had a fraternity at that time. Now, there were multiple fraternities, and there were some that were national, and then there were ours that were local. But we had a rival fraternity in town, and they were like the preppies, and we were like the rednecks. Unfortunately, I lived in Lynn Haven. I was not one of the preppies. So, and we had kind of an adversarial relationship back in those days. They had their little room, their little section of the student center, and we had ours. But in those days, they allowed hazing. And so there was 3 weeks that you had to pledge for a fraternity. This was all, at the time, approved by the college. And so we had 3 weeks that new pledges, that's what we call them, would try to get into the fraternity. And it was a 3-week process. And they had to do whatever the brothers said, And of course, we all were required to keep our grades up. That was part of the thing. You had to attend classes. You weren't allowed to skip or miss classes as part of your pledging for the fraternity. So whatever you did, we made every effort to get you back to class in time. And so they would just basic hazing, now, which I don't believe that we did anything illegal. Now, in today's world, it would be probably unethical, but what is eating a minnow between friends? It doesn't hurt you. But basically, the fraternity would make you do crazy things with your other brothers. Nobody was allowed to be pledged or hazed alone. The idea was you could only do it with your brothers. You had to have at least one other member that was pledging with you, so that you didn't do it alone. The idea was brotherhood through common hardship. That was the idea of the fraternity. And it kind of works. I still know plenty of these guys today. I'm 61 now, and I still have frat brothers that I can call, and I know today that are still good friends of mine, even this much later. So, and then officially the college allowed us on the last week was called Hell Week. And I remember just to give you an example, one of our events that we did on campus in front of all the students. I think it was like 10 a.m. in the morning when the student center was full of students in between classes, was called the egg drop. And this gives you an example of what we had to go through. And at the egg drop, the president of the fraternity that semester, which one of the semesters was me, we had a ladder set up, we had a dozen eggs, and then each pledge, for that Hell Week, you all wore a white shirt that the little sisters made for us. It all had your little pledge name on it, and you had to wear it all week, that little white shirt. And so we took raw eggs. This sounds crazy nowadays, but this is what we did. But so the president of the fraternity got on a ladder, and then we cracked eggs and broke them from the ladder, and we tried to drop them into your mouth, the raw eggs. And you had to try to catch them with your mouth. And of course, it was impossible to catch. That's not too bad, real raw egg. But I had brothers stuff whole raw eggs in my mouth, and you had to eat the shell and all. Sorry for my finger. But point is, of course, the egg would get all over you and all over your white shirt, and then you had to go to class. So all day that day, you went to classes, and you had that shirt on with the raw egg spilled all over, And so, but it was part of the MO of the fraternity to show that you were trying hard and that you were, I don't want to say shaming yourself, but that you had to go through this hell, if you will, to get in the fraternity. And a lot of guys looked just like you on campus. I think there was about 20 guys in my pledging group. And then the brothers, of course, we all wore our jerseys almost every day to school. We had fraternity jerseys that had our name on them or our nickname, a big Iota Gamma on it. And we wore those all the time. We were pretty popular, I thought, around the campus because, back in those days too, we could have keg parties, official keg parties. We were all legal in those days. I was for a little while. They changed the law, and then I wasn't legal for a little while. But bottom line is, we were a presence on campus. Every fraternity had to have a campus sponsor. So we all had some member of the faculty looking over what we did relatively.
Who's your sponsor?
Well, our first sponsor was a guy that I love named Roy Smith. I believe we went to a guy named Ian Barker for a little while, which was a good friend of mine's stepdad. I really liked Ian Barker. And then we went to the illustrious John Holdnack, who later went on to become president of Gulf Coast College, who I still kind of consider a good friend of mine. I liked John. He was very concerned about my fraternity, but he always treated us in a very value-added and fair way. And so I always liked that guy. And I know now that he's no longer the president of the college, but I know that he became president for a while, and I considered him a very good man and a fair man. And I liked him. Yes.
Well, Lee, thank you for coming on and speaking to us about the differences that they were back then. It's interesting to hear that Gulf Coast had pre-med, that they had fraternities, and what else do we talk about? And hazing, yeah, fraternities, hazing. They offered pre-med.
And everybody came to class every day.
And you had to go to class. It's come a long ways. Now, you can get your bachelor's degree and maybe not even have to go to class. So depending on where you are, most teachers will work with you there these days. So it's really geared toward the adult and to be able to work and go to college at the same time. But thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, hi, Gene. How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty okay today. How are you?
Good. I wish you were feeling a little better, but
it is what it is.
Well, I wanted to get you. I got an older gentleman's take earlier on what Gulf Coast started out as, you could say. So now I'm kind of wanting to get your take and experience as you've experienced it now that it's an actual state college.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start with, I started attending Gulf Coast, well, now it's state college instead of community college, back in 2018. And honestly, I think at that point they had adopted the bachelor's programs, I think, or they were starting to, or I'm not entirely sure. That was forever ago. I don't remember all that too well. Because I've been there too long. But I feel like they were starting to adopt the bachelor's programs around that time, if they had not already. Although my experience there was, I loved it. I loved the small community, the tightly knit, family oriented, I guess, faculty with students, the professional relationships that you have, and how accommodating they can be. And I don't know how that was before I went there, but as far as when I did start, it was, I can't think of anywhere else I'd want to go. I'm kind of upset that they don't have any higher grad programs. Otherwise, I'd continue there. But
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Well, do you feel like it's been do they accommodate you
yes.
easily there when it comes to scheduling and being able to go to class or not have to go to class, things like that?
So I do, but I also think a lot of that has to do with building a rapport with the teachers and giving them a taste of the work ethic or school work ethic. And that also plays a part in how lenient they are with whatever your schedule is with classes and dates and due dates and all that stuff. I think that also plays a factor. But yes, I do think that it's a lot easier at Gulf Coast State College to have the teachers give you an extended period if you need it, or just to communicate. You just communicate. All you need to do is just communicate, and you're fine.
Exactly. That is what I find really nice. See, when I first went to Gulf Coast, It was in 2000. So, and I got my AA degree, or I guess I was dual enrolled before then, but I got my AA degree in 2004. but most of my classes were either in person and you had to be there, and you had to be on time. I literally have one teacher that would lock the door at 8 a.m. And I can remember how hard that was for me to make it to class. And then also, like anything on, we didn't really have that much online. We had a couple, it was called distance education. And you would go check out like a whole bunch of VHS tapes to go home and play to actually get your class, your lectures and stuff like that.
That's interesting. It's been so long since I've heard that word VHS or term VHS. Those don't exist much anymore.
I wonder if the library still has any of those.
That's a good question. Next time I go into the library, I'm gonna ask that. Just out of curiosity. So I'm gonna reciprocate what you asked me, and so tell me your opinion versus the difference between what Gulf Coast State College is now versus what Gulf Coast Community College was back then.
Drastic change. It's gone from, pretty much like going to high school to, being treated like an adult, like a higher, learning atmosphere, more where teachers treat you like an individual, not just a student. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
So are you saying that you have friends or you have other current students or the people that went to Gulf Coast Community College and they're that aren't experiencing what? Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Yeah, like I have my friends who went to school there for their AA. If you were to talk to them, they would say that they really didn't get anything out of it. Like it wasn't that. Like it never really did anything for them. And really your AA doesn't really, if you don't really do much else, it's not really gonna do anything for you. I don't feel like it definitely didn't do anything for me, and it didn't help with job increases. People either want your bachelor's or, they're treating you like you've got a high school diploma pretty much,
Right. Well, I mean, me personally, I feel like your AA or even your AS is like a high school equivalent on a college level of high school equivalent.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've looked at job application on like LinkedIn, Indeed, everywhere online. And I see nowhere where they said minimum requirement AS or AA. It's always a bachelor's.
Exactly.
So
it pays good.
Yes, but also it's either that or the work experience. If you can provide the work experience, then there's also your way in.
Yeah, but you gotta find somewhere where you can get the work experience,
Right. Yeah, even applying for internships, whether it's paid or it's not, just to get the experience to have the ability to say, hey, I could do this. That's not very common that I'm seeing. It's not something that I see very often, which is sad.
I will tell you something else that is different that I remember. I feel like everybody, it seemed like almost everybody ate at the school. Like everybody ate in the cafeteria. It was just like a hustling, bustling place. And now I feel like there's never anyone there,
Yeah.
So that's a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I actually I don't go to the I go to the cafeteria to get a snack or a drink or something, just because I'm already on that side of campus anyway. I'm only there 2 days a week this semester. But there's maybe like a handful of people there now, and that's it. It's mostly quiet. I don't mind it. I don't mind the quiet.
Food now? Like real food now?
No, they
snacks.
still have the snacks.
Oh, it's sad.
Yeah, they don't have stations where you can get food. Yeah, they don't have that. I don't know if there's anything being done about that. I hope there is, because I know they still do the food trucks. I see those, and I get the text messages from the college about that, but personally, that's a little too expensive to do every day or
Yeah.
That's just too expensive for me.
I
I'd
know, and
rather
they
do
used to
something
have
else.
really good deals for food, you know?
Yeah.
That was nice too. Yeah, I can remember that. It was like a lot cheaper. That's probably why we all ate there. It was a lot cheaper than having to go somewhere else. Anyways. So,
Until next time.
until next time,
There we go.
we're signing off with our podcast today.